A cheating husband emptied his pregnant wife's savings and disappeared without a trace. 10 years later, he returns completely broke, begging for forgiveness. Dark secrets are revealed, and an impossible decision must be made. This story of betrayal, redemption, and justice will make you question the limits of forgiveness. Prepare your heart for an emotional journey that will change your perspective on family and second chances. Leave a like, subscribe, and comment on where you're watching from. I never imagined that a simple bank inquiry would completely change the course of my life. It was a sunny Wednesday in Pittsburgh when I decided to check my savings. After all, with twins on the way, I needed to make sure everything was in order. After 5 years of marriage, and at 35 years old, I had finally realized my dream of motherhood. Twins. The news of the 2 babies filled my heart with a joy I had never experienced before. Sitting in front of the computer, I accessed my savings account, the one where I religiously saved part of my salary as a nurse for over 10 years. The balance that appeared on the screen looked like a cruel mistake. Where $87,000 should have been, there was only $12.37. My heart skipped a beat. I refreshed the page. Once, twice, 3 times. The amount remained unchanged, like an implacable sentence. There must be some mistake, I thought, trying to control my breathing as I called the bank. The monotonous voice of the representative on the other end of the line only confirmed what I already feared. Ma'am, the withdrawals were made over the last 3 months, all authorized with the correct password. My husband came home that night with a bouquet of flowers and a teddy bear for the babies. His smile disappeared when he saw my swollen eyes and the bank statements scattered on the kitchen table. "What did you do with our money, Richard?" I asked, with a calmness I didn't even know I possessed at that moment. He dropped the flowers on the floor. "I can explain, Anna. It was an investment, importing electronics. The return would be 3 times greater in a few months." An investment? With all the money I saved during 10 years of double shifts and overtime? Without consulting me? My voice came out choked, but firm. One hand instinctively supported my 7-month belly, as if trying to protect my children from the storm that was brewing. "Honey, I was going to tell you when I had the first results. I wanted to surprise you." He knelt down, taking my hands. "Just imagine, we could buy a bigger house, maybe even hire a full-time nanny." I stared into those brown eyes that once made me believe in fairy tales. "Since when do you know about importing, Richard? You're an accountant. You work with numbers, not international business." I met people, made contacts. "Everything is on track, I swear." He spoke too quickly, avoiding my gaze, a sign I knew well from patients when they lied about taking their medication. "I want to see the contracts, the receipts, everything," I demanded. Of course. They're just not with me right now. I'll show you everything tomorrow." That night, lying in the bed we had shared for years, I felt a void bigger than the ocean. The babies moved inside me, oblivious to the hurricane that was devastating our not yet fully formed family. Richard slept, or pretended to sleep, on the other side of the bed, a physical distance that mirrored the abyss that was beginning to form between us. The promises of the following days amounted to empty excuses and documents that never appeared. "They're with my partner. The accountant is reviewing them. There was a problem at customs." With each new day, a new justification. And then, on a Monday morning, I woke up alone. On the pillow beside me, only a hastily written note. "Anna, I'm sorry. Things didn't go as I planned. I need some time to sort everything out. I'll pay you back every cent, I promise. Take good care of our children." I laughed. A dry, bitter laugh that echoed through the walls of the empty room. Take good care of our children. As if I had a choice. As if he had left me any alternative other than to move on. That day, I cried until I had no more tears. Then, I got up, took a long shower, and made a list. Practical items. 1. Inform the bank about possible new withdrawal attempts. 2. Contact a lawyer. 3. Notify the hospital about my situation and check the possibility of overtime. Calculate how much I would need for the next few months. Rationality had always been my safe harbor in times of crisis. As a nurse, I learned that panic doesn't save lives. Calculated action does. And now, It wasn't just my life and my children's. Lives that were at stake, but also our dignity and future. My family reacted as expected. Shock, indignation, and then unconditional support typical of people from my state. My mother moved temporarily into my apartment, bringing with her the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the silent wisdom of someone who had faced her own battles. "Honey, men are like crackers. Some break too easily," she said as she prepared dinner the night I told her about Richard's escape. "Mom, it's not the time for your culinary analogies," I replied, rubbing my forehead. "It's precisely the time, my daughter. Life goes on, the babies are coming, and you need to eat properly." She placed a plate of steaming soup in front of me. "And remember, you are the daughter of Maria das Graças. We don't fall apart. We rebuild." The following weeks were a blur of medical appointments, meetings with the lawyer, and financial reorganization. The hospital where I worked proved surprisingly understanding, offering me a special arrangement. I could continue working until the 8th month, and after maternity leave, I would have flexible hours. It wasn't ideal, but it was enough to breathe. The twins were born on a rainy September dawn. Michael arrived first, followed by Beatrice 5 minutes later. When I held them for the first time, an absolute certainty washed over me. I would do anything for them. Any sacrifice, any battle. Looking at those perfect little faces, I swore they would never know scarcity or abandonment. "They have your eyes," commented the nurse as she helped me breastfeed them. "And I hope they have my strength too," I replied, feeling an iron determination. Replace the despair of the previous months. Returning home with 2 newborns was a monumental challenge. Sleepless nights, constant breastfeeding, visits to the pediatrician, everything seemed to conspire against my sanity. But there were also moments of such pure joy that almost compensated for everything else. Michael's first smile, the way Beatrice grabbed my finger with her tiny hand, the quiet afternoons when both slept at the same time. Between diapers and bottles, I continued to look for Richard. Not out of longing or a desire for reconciliation, but for a practical reason: child support. The twins were entitled to it. I even hired a private investigator, spending money I didn't have just to find out that my ex-husband seemed to have disappeared off the map, as if the earth had swallowed him and my 87,000er. Sunday lunches at my parents' house became a sacred ritual, and at the same time, an ordeal. Between the fried chicken and okra and the dessert, the inevitable question always arose. "And Richard, any news?" "Aunt Cecilia, if I had any news, you would be the first to know, after the police and my lawyer," I replied once, with a forced smile. The awkward silence that followed was almost palpable. "Anna, your aunt is just worried," my father interjected, always the family diplomat. "I know, Dad. Sorry, Aunt Cecilia. It's just that it's been almost a year, and there's still no sign of him." I took a deep breath. "But the twins are growing strong. Michael is already trying to roll over on his own, and Beatrice has lungs that would make any soprano envious." The subject always changed to the children, and I was internally grateful for that. Talking about my children was much easier than explaining how foolish I had been to trust someone blindly. It was on an ordinary afternoon, 3 years after the twins were born, that I received the call that reopened all the wounds. An employee from the IRS informing me that my name appeared as a co-owner of a bankrupt import company with considerable tax debts. There must be some mistake. I never signed any documents to open a company, I argued, feeling the ground disappear beneath my feet. "Ma'am, we have copies of the contracts with your signature. I recommend you seek legal advice as soon as possible." After hanging up, I remained motionless for long minutes, watching the twins play on the living room rug. Beatrice built a tower with colorful blocks, while Michael tried, unsuccessfully, to stack his toy cars. They were the picture of innocence, oblivious to the weight that had just been added to my shoulders. The lawyer I hired, Mr. Paul Mendez, was a man in his 50s, with tired eyes and a determination that gave me the first glimmer of hope in a long time. "Ms. Anna, this is clearly fraud," he stated after examining the documents I obtained from the IRS. This is not your signature. Any forensic handwriting expert will confirm that. But I won't lie to you. It will be a long battle. Doctor, I've been at war for 3 years. One more battle doesn't scare me. He smiled, a discreet smile that didn't reach his eyes. It's that spirit we'll need. And if you'll allow me the indiscretion, your ex-husband is a fool for abandoning a woman like you. I looked away, uncomfortable with the unexpected compliment. He didn't just abandon me, doctor. He stole my money, forged my signature, and now left me with a debt that isn't mine. Fool would be an understatement. The following months were a roller coaster of emotions and red tape. Forensic handwriting, analyses, depositions, endless meetings with the district attorney's office. Meanwhile, I balanced work at the hospital, raising the twins, now more independent but also more inquisitive, and the few hours of sleep I managed to steal from the early mornings. "Mommy, why does Felipe have a daddy and we don't?" Beatrice asked one day after we returned from a birthday party of a classmate from daycare. The question caught me off guard, like a punch in the stomach. I had rehearsed this answer mentally dozens of times, but I never seemed to find the right words. "You do have a daddy, Bea. He's just not here with us. Doesn't he like us?" The small, innocent voice almost broke my heart. "It's not that, my love. Sometimes adults make complicated choices, but that has nothing to do with you too. Your father. He had problems to solve." "What problems, Mom?" Michael interjected, always the more curious one. "Grown-up problems, son. Things you'll understand when you're older." I hugged them both, feeling simultaneously protective and deceitful. "How? Do you explain to 3-year-olds that their father had preferred money to family?" The legal battle finally ended almost 2 years later, when a judge declared that I had been a victim of fraud. My name was cleared, and the Phantom Company was officially dissolved. I didn't recover a cent of the stolen money, but at least I wouldn't have to bear the debts left by Richard. It was during this period that Dr. Paul became more than my lawyer. He became a friend. Initially, I maintained a calculated distance. Trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. But over time, his constant presence and genuine support began to break down the barriers I had erected. "You should consider specializing," he suggested during one of our lunches after a hearing. "With your experience as a nurse, it could open more doors." The idea planted a seed that would flourish in the following months. With the twins starting preschool and my name finally cleared, I decided to invest in myself, a specialization in neonatal nursing. Balancing work, studies, and motherhood required juggling worthy of a circus artist. Nights turned into days between books and academic papers. My neighbors and fellow church members became invaluable allies, taking turns picking up the children from school when I was on shift or in class. "Anna, you need to rest," warned Mrs. Cindy, my 70-year-old neighbor, as she saw me arriving exhausted after a 12-hour shift. "Those boys need a living mother, not a martyr." "I'm fine, Mrs. Cindy. It's just a phase," I replied as she placed a bowl of still warm chicken soup in my hands. "Phase or not, you're going to eat all of this now. And I don't want to hear, 'I'm not hungry.' A proper Southern girl who doesn't eat right loses her accent, you know?" I laughed for real for the first time in weeks. The simplicity and affection of that lady were a balm to my exhausted soul. The routine was exhausting, but also rewarding. Seeing the twins growing healthy and happy, excelling at school, and developing such distinct personalities. Michael, introverted and observant. Beatrice, talkative and charismatic, filled my chest with a pride that compensated for all the sacrifices. At home, I maintained an almost sacred ritual: the account book. Every penny that came in and went out was meticulously recorded. It was a practice I had learned from my grandmother and now passed on to my children. "Mommy, why do you write all this down?" Michael asked one night, watching me update the book after doing the month's grocery shopping. "Because we need to know where our money is going, son. That way, we can plan for the future. Like that savings account for our college that you talked about?" "Exactly. If we don't know where our money is going today, we won't be able to save for tomorrow." His eyes shone with precocious understanding. "When I grow up, I'm going to have a notebook just like yours. And you're going to be very good at it, I'm sure," I replied, ruffling his dark hair, so similar to his father's that it sometimes hurt to look at. The completion of my specialization coincided with a proposal that would once again change the course of our story. A renowned hospital in Chicago offered me a position on their neonatal nursing team, with a considerably higher salary than my current one. The idea of leaving Pittsburgh, my family, my support network seemed daunting, but it also represented a unique opportunity, a fresh start, away from the shadows of the past. "What do you think about us moving to Chicago?" I asked the twins. During dinner, trying to sound casual, as if I were suggesting a trip to the zoo. Beatrice frowned. "Is Grandma going with us?" "No, honey. Grandma will continue living here, but we can visit her during the holidays, and she can visit us too." "But does it have a playground?" Michael asked, pragmatic as always. "Yes, it has many playgrounds, and museums, and parks, and a lot of cool places for us to explore." "Then I want to go," he decided, turning his attention back to his pasta. Beatrice took longer to convince, but after promising she could decorate her new room however she wanted, she also embraced the idea. Children have this admirable ability to adapt, something that, over the years, we adults tend to lose. The move to Chicago took place during an exceptionally cold winter. The apartment we rented was close to the hospital, smaller than our house, in Pittsburgh, but functional. In the first few weeks, there were nightly tears asking for Grandma, the old school, the friends left behind. But little by little, the new routine settled in. The hospital was everything I expected and more. The team was highly qualified. The infrastructure was world-class. I felt professionally challenged in a way I hadn't in a long time. And the twins, to my surprise and relief, adapted surprisingly well to their new school. "Mom, Michael has a girlfriend," Beatrice reported one afternoon as we drove home from school. "I do not," he protested, his face as red as a tomato. "You do too. Julia from our class waits for you every day at recess. That's not dating. We just play together." I laughed, watching the two of them bickering in the rearview mirror. Moments like these, so normal, so ordinary, were small treasures in the life we had rebuilt. In 2 years, I was promoted to supervisor of the neonatal unit, a recognition of my work and dedication that filled me with pride. Financially, we were finally stable. I even managed to start a new savings account, this time in an account only I had access to. The weekly video calls with family back home kept alive the Southern drawl and the traditions that were part of our identity. The twins, now 7 years old, eagerly awaited these calls, especially when Grandma showed what she had prepared for Sunday lunch. "Grandma, make that fudge next time we visit, okay?" Beatrice asked, her mouth almost watering at the thought. "Of course, my little sugar plum. And I'll save some pieces of cheese in the fridge just for Michael, because I know he likes it." Life had found a balance that seemed almost perfect, until that afternoon in Indianapolis, during a neonatal nursing conference. Between lectures, I checked my phone, and there it was. A message on social media from a profile I recognized immediately, even after so many years. Richard. My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment I considered simply blocking and ignoring it. But curiosity, or perhaps a last thread of a long-buried feeling, made me open the message. "Anna, I know I don't deserve your time or attention, but I need to see you. I need to meet my children. I'm in Indianapolis, less than 3 hours from Chicago. Please give me a chance to explain everything. I'm sorry and broke. Life has taken every penny I took from you." A dry laugh escaped my lips, attracting curious glances from other conference attendees. Broke? Sorry? After 10 years? After the twins learned to walk, talk, read, write, all without their father's presence? I didn't reply immediately. I let the message sit for days, consulted my therapist, an indulgence I had allowed myself after the promotion, and talked to Dr. Paul, who after much persistence and a long-distance relationship for 6 months, had moved to Chicago, unable to imagine his life without me and the children. "What do you want to do?" Paul asked as we prepared dinner together, a routine we had established in recent years. Honestly, part of me wants to ignore him completely. He doesn't deserve to meet those wonderful children. I paused, chopping onions more vigorously than necessary. But I also think The twins have the right to know their biological father, don't they? What if they question me one day for denying them that? Paul put down the knife he was using and took my hands. Anna, you are the fairest person I know. If you're considering allowing this meeting, it's not for him. It's for your children. And that shows how much you love them. What if he disappears again? What if he hurts their feelings? Then we'll be here to support them, just like we always have been. That "we" warmed my heart. Paul never tried to replace Richard as a father. He created his own space in the children's lives as a present, reliable, loving male figure, a safe harbor that even I didn't know we needed until he appeared. Finally, we arranged a meeting at a coffee shop near the hospital. I asked a colleague to cover the first hour of my shift, explaining the situation without going into details. I arrived 10 minutes early, choosing a strategic table, close to the exit, but not too exposed. When Richard walked into the coffee shop, I almost didn't recognize him. The athletic man with the easy smile and confident walk had disappeared. In his place was someone visibly older than his 45 years, leaning on a cane, with gray hair and a tired look that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "Anna," he said, his voice choked. "You look beautiful." "Spare me the compliments, Richard," I replied, colder than I intended. "Sit down. We have a lot to talk about, and my time is limited." He obeyed, resting the cane on the chair beside him. I noticed he had a noticeable limp. "What happened to your leg?" I asked, partly out of politeness, partly out of genuine curiosity. "Car accident 3 years ago. Multiple fractures in my right leg. It never fully recovered." He tried a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Ironic, isn't it? When I finally decided to come back and try to make amends, this happens. Life has a peculiar sense of humor," I commented, surprising myself with the almost friendly tone. "You said you're broke. What happened to all that money, my money, that you took?" Richard lowered his eyes to the cup of coffee the waitress had just brought. "I lost it all. The business was real, Anna. But my partner, he disappeared with the capital before we could even start operations. After that, it was a downward spiral. I tried other businesses, got into debt, moved cities several times. Why didn't you contact me before? Why didn't you at least try to pay child support for your children? Shame, fear, cowardice." He finally looked at me. "Take your pick of reasons. They're all true. When I finally tried to find you in Pittsburgh, I learned you had moved to Chicago. I lost my courage again. And now, what changed? I received a recent diagnosis. It's not terminal, but it made me rethink a lot of things." He paused. "Anna, I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I want to meet my children. I want them to know that despite all my mistakes, I never stopped thinking about them." I watched him in silence for a long moment. The man in front of me was no longer the villain who haunted my nightmares, nor the Prince Charming I once believed I had found. He was just a broken man, reaping the consequences of his choices. "They have names, Richard. Michael and Beatrice. Michael is introverted, loves science, and has an impressive collection of rocks. Beatrice is talkative, loves to dance, and can convince anyone to do what she wants with that smile. They are incredible, and they grew up without you by your choice." "I know," he murmured, "and I regret it every day." "Regret doesn't pay bills or buy diapers," I replied, repeating aloud the thought I had 10 years ago when I found his note on the pillow. In the following months, we arranged supervised visits. First, I talked at length with the twins, explaining the situation as neutrally as possible. To my surprise, they reacted with a mixture of curiosity and caution, more mature than their 8 years suggested. "Is he as nice as Uncle Paul?" Beatrice asked before the first meeting. "No, honey, he's different, but he's very excited to meet you. Is he going to live with us?" The worry in Michael's voice was palpable. "No, son, he has his own house. You'll just see each other from time to time if you want to." The first meeting was tense and awkward. Richard brought gifts, of course, trying to buy what couldn't be bought. The twins, initially shy, slowly began to open up. Michael was more reserved, while Beatrice, curious by nature, bombarded her father with questions. "Why did you disappear? Didn't you like us? Are you sick? Why do you use a cane? Are you going to leave again? Richard answered each question with a patience I didn't recognize in him. For a moment, watching them from afar, I felt a pang of something I couldn't name. It wasn't jealousy, nor anger. Perhaps it was just the realization of how much time had been lost. During one of these visits, a few months later, Richard handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked, suspicious. "Documents from an inheritance from an uncle who passed away last month. It's not much, but I want to use it to pay back part of what I took from you." My laughter was instant. "Seriously, Richard? Another miracle investment?" His face flushed with shame. "No, Anna. It's legitimate this time. You can check with my lawyer. It's $35,000, and I know it's not even half of what I owe you, but it's a start." I was about to refuse when he added something that caught me off guard. "And there's one more thing you need to know about what really happened back then. What else could there be to know? You stole my money, forged my signature, and disappeared when I was 7 months pregnant. It wasn't exactly like that." He hesitated. "Do you remember Christina, my ex-girlfriend from college?" "Vaguely. What does she have to do with this?" "She contacted me months before I disappeared. She was launching an import company, needed investors, showed projections, contracts. Everything looked legitimate." He paused, as if organizing his thoughts. "We started meeting to discuss business. One day, after a few drinks, she convinced me to invest. She said it would be the chance of a lifetime, mine and yours, that we could give our children a better future, buy a bigger house, travel the world. It was pure manipulation. And you fell for it hook, line, and sinker," I replied, crossing my arms. "Yes. When the money disappeared along with her, I panicked. I tried to recover, invested what was left in desperate bets. I dug myself an even deeper hole." He ran a hand through his gray hair. "When I found out I had forged your signature to open the company, I just couldn't face you. It was cowardly, I know." I remained silent for a few moments, digesting that revelation. It didn't change the facts. It didn't erase the abandonment. But somehow, it humanized the villain of my story. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because Michael and Beatrice deserve to know that their father isn't just a selfish monster. I was weak, I was foolish, but I never intentionally wanted to hurt you." I stared at the envelope in my hands, feeling its weight, not just physical, but symbolic. Accepting that money would be opening a door I had kept locked for a decade. "I'll think about it," was all I could say. In the following weeks, the envelope remained untouched in my desk drawer. Paul respected my silence on the matter, although I could sense his curiosity. The twins continued their supervised visits with Richard, slowly developing a relationship that, although cautious, was beginning to take root. It was during the school's fall festival, as I watched Michael trying to knock down cans with a ball while Beatrice danced the square dance, that the answer hit me with a flash of clarity. Richard was there, a few feet away, using his cane for support as he cheered for his son. Paul beside me applauded enthusiastically. Two very different male figures, both now part of the complex tapestry that was our life. The true legacy I would leave for my children would not be financial. It wouldn't be the stolen $87,000, wow, or the $35,000 offered as partial restitution. It would be the example of how to face adversity with dignity, how to rebuild after the storm, how to forgive without forgetting. The next morning, I called Richard for coffee. "I've decided to accept the money," I announced without preamble. "But not for me. I'm going to deposit it into a savings account for Michael and Beatrice's college." His face lit up with visible relief. "It's more than I deserve, Anna. Thank you. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for our children. And because, as much as it has cost me to admit, forgiveness frees the one who forgives more than the one who is forgiven. You were always the stronger one between us," he said with a melancholic smile. "I didn't have a choice. When you decide to be a mother, weakness is not an option." I left that coffee shop with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. The past had not been erased. The scars would remain. The painful memories would still surface in unexpected moments. But the poison of resentment, which had for so long corroded my heart, was finally beginning to dissipate. That night, While helping the twins with their homework, Beatrice surprised me with a question. "Mommy, do you still get sad when you see Daddy?" I paused, carefully choosing my words. "No, honey. I don't get sad anymore. There was a time when I did, but now it's different." "Different how?" she insisted, always perceptive. "Like that time you fell off your bike and scraped your knee, remember? At first it hurt a lot," you cried. "Then a scab formed, and when the scab fell off, there was just a little mark that you can hardly see." She nodded, satisfied with the analogy. Michael, who had been silently listening to the conversation while pretending to concentrate on his math, added, "It's good that you're not sad, Mom. You smile more now." I hugged my children, those little beings who, in their innocent wisdom, saw truths that took me years to understand. Yes, I smiled more now, not because the past had been rewritten, or because the injustices had been completely repaired. I smiled because I had learned that life rarely offers perfect endings, only new beginnings. And at that moment, surrounded by the love of my children and the peace I had finally found, I knew that this new beginning was more than enough. It was, in fact, everything I needed. The woman who once cried upon discovering an empty bank account now understood that true wealth was there. In that apartment in Chicago, in the laughter of the twins, in Paul's affection, and even in the unlikely reconciliation with the past that Richard represented. The $87,000 that once represented all my financial security, all my planning for the future, now seemed like just numbers in a story that was worth so much more. A story about resilience, about new beginnings, about the human capacity to find light, even in the darkest darkness. The account was finally settled, not in dollars, but in lessons learned, not in bank balances, but in inner peace. And that, I discovered, was a type of wealth that no one could ever steal from me again. One morning, almost a year after Richard returned to our lives, I received a call from the hospital informing me that he had been admitted with complications from his chronic condition. The twins, now 9 years old, insisted on visiting him. I watched from a distance as they told him stories from school, showed him drawings, and simply were present for that man who, despite everything, was part of them. "You didn't have to. Bring the kids," Richard told me when they went to buy something at the cafeteria with Paul. "They wanted to come. And I think it's important for them to understand that, even in difficult times, we don't abandon people." A solitary tear rolled down Richard's aged face. "Funny, isn't it? You teaching our children not to do what I did. Life is full of these ironies," I replied, feeling a compassion I never imagined I could harbor for him again. As we left the hospital that afternoon, hand in hand with my children, with Paul walking beside us, I realized that the circle was finally closing. The journey that began with betrayal and abandonment now culminated in an imperfect but genuine form of redemption. "I'm proud of you," Paul whispered as he drove us home. "Not everyone could have done what you did. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just chose not to let the past define our future." He smiled, that smile that still made my heart race after so many years. And that's exactly what makes you extraordinary. I looked in the rearview mirror at the twins, who were dozing in the back seat. Michael with his head resting on his sister's shoulder, Beatrice with a faint smile on her lips, as if, even in her dreams, she found reasons to smile. They would grow up knowing both human imperfection and redemption. They would know that people can fail terribly, but they can also seek forgiveness. They would learn that family is not defined solely by blood ties, but by the daily choices of love and commitment. And who knows, one day, when they face their own storms, because life inevitably brings challenges to everyone, they would remember the mother who lost everything except her dignity, and yet rebuilt a world where there was even room for forgiveness. Those $87,000 that once represented all my financial security, all my planning for the future, now seemed like just numbers in a story that was worth so much more. A story about resilience, about new beginnings, about the human capacity to find light even in the densest darkness. The account was finally settled. Not in dollars, but in lessons learned. Not in bank balances, but in inner peace. And that, I discovered, was a type of wealth that no one could ever steal from me again.